Allegiances are about binding yourself to a country, a leader, or a cause, giving your time, your money, your heart, even your future to something or someone. Everyone has an allegiance to something. That which we love, that gets a grip of our heart, whatever it is, a cause, a sports team, or a hero. Deep allegiances have gripped the hearts of many of us on this island. Now, we're not talking about film stars, pop idols, or saving the rainforest. In Northern Ireland, political allegiance has shaped us. These allegiances shape our views on how we should be governed, or more particularly, by whom. Do we choose to be Unionists, those who want to be part of the United Kingdom and want to keep being part of the United Kingdom? They want to continue being British. Or do we choose to be nationalists, those who would love to see a united Ireland, wanting to see the border disappear and the island becoming one country totally separate from the United Kingdom? The allegiances we have to unionism or nationalism reach deep places in us. Depending on what we bind ourselves to affects how we see the past, live the present and look to the future. It affects how we see ourselves, and it also shapes how we see others. Allegiances are part of life. There's nothing wrong with allegiance, unless it leads us to feelings of superiority over others. When allegiance leads to feeling rivalry with others, that can easily grow into hostility. Then something unhealthy is in the making. John Maxwell tells the story of an experiment. 4 monkeys were placed in a room that had a tall pole in the centre. Suspended from the top of that pole was a bunch of bananas. One of the hungry monkeys started climbing the pole to get something to eat. But just as he reached out to grab a banana, he was doused with a torrent of cold water. Squealing, he scampered down the pole and abandoned his attempt to feed himself. Each monkey made a similar attempt, and each one was drenched with cold water. After making several attempts, they finally gave up. Then researchers removed one of the monkeys from the room and replaced him with a new monkey. As the newcomer began to climb the pole, the other 3 grabbed him and pulled him down to the ground. After trying to climb the pole several times and being dragged down by the others, he finally gave up and never attempted to climb the pole again. The same thing can happen to us as others shape our views on politics and how we see the world. But we have our reasons for separation. It didn't just happen. We know some of the events that shape us, but we do not recognise that we would do better to look at those events as tragic rather than a source of our identity. But somehow, allegiance grew into something that created tragedy. Tragedy is the experiencing of calamity. It is something that causes great loss or sorrow. Tragedy is what happened in Northern Ireland. Somehow our divisions got expressed in violence. Leaf through the book Lost Lives, and it tells the story of each life lost as a result of the Troubles. Nearly 4,000 deaths. Behind each of them is a story of loss and pain. Beyond the lives lost are stories of injury, both physical and psychological. Allow Susan Mackay to speak. The Troubles have ended, but many of those who suffered still have no peace of mind. Nearly 4,000 people were killed during the conflict. A legacy of hurt remains, of suicide and broken hearts, and injuries to mind and body that have not healed. Added to the personal tragedies of the Troubles is the tragedy of what has happened to our community. 13 miles of peace walls in towns and cities across our land. There are other walls that keep us apart too. The vast majority of children, as many as 90%, are educated separately on the basis of religion. Housing has become more and more segregated. Many years after the first ceasefires, and still over 90% of public housing in Belfast is segregated. The largest walls can be the invisible ones, the ones that are in our minds, walls and barriers that we will not cross, unseen walls that keep us safe in our place and them in theirs, walls that keep us apart. Ceasefires and political agreement are better than what Northern Ireland had, but somehow we had the weapons decommissioned, got the bombs stopped and the army to go away, but have all these processes made us weary with politics in Northern Ireland? There's tired, and there's weary. One is a feeling you get for a while, but weariness is something that gets into your very bones. It is the fatigue that comes from great strain or stress. The best part of 40 years of violence, nearly 4,000 deaths and countless injuries, life and livelihoods disrupted, some destroyed, with such a dark history, it is perhaps not surprising that we are weary, even content to ignore the legacy of bitterness, mistrust and hate. And what of the politics in the 10 years after the ceasefires? It seemed to be years of political wrangling, infighting and opportunism. Whatever it was like for the politicians, it has left the rest of us jaded. Lest we forget, there is a world outside of our country. The world never stands still. The credit crunch and recession means less money for everyone. Government really does have to be about the bread and butter stuff. With less in the kitty, we are all thinking about our jobs and making ends meet. That means less energy for political fight. Violence, endless political wrangling and financial scandals. Add in the credit crunch and it takes its toll on all of us. Does the weariness mean that we'll settle for sullen separation? Two tribes warily living apart? Anything as long as it isn't what we had. Are we so frightened of unravelling the fragile peace that we don't address underlying problems? Are we breaking a cycle of division and mistrust amongst each other? Or is this just a breathing space? What will we settle for? Recharging the batteries so that we can write the story of a new future together, or resting for the next instalment of the struggle? Somehow there is a temptation to settle for separate existence, the absence of fighting, but with the walls in our minds still intact. Weariness makes us open to temptation, to do what we know we should avoid, the seduction of settling for living apart from our neighbours rather than trying to forge a new shared story together. It leaves dangerous seeds that may sprout in the future. Somehow, there must be a bigger vision than this, a better way, something that can open up not only a new way to live, but a new way to think about our country. Jesus inspires us by telling a story. There was once a man travelling from Jerusalem to Jericho. On the way he was attacked by robbers. They took his clothes, beat him up, and went off leaving him half dead. Luckily, a priest was on his way down the same road, but when he saw him, he angled across to the other side. Then a Levite religious man showed up. He also avoided the injured man. A Samaritan travelling the road came on him. When he saw the man's condition, his heart went out to him. He gave him first aid, disinfecting and bandaging his wound. He then lifted him up on his donkey, led him to an inn, and made him comfortable. In the morning, he took out 2 silver coins and gave them to the innkeeper, saying, "Take good care of him. If it costs any more, put it on my bill. I'll pay you on my way back." What do you think? Which of the 3 became a neighbour to the man attacked by robbers? The one who treated him kindly, the religious scholar responded. Jesus said, "Yes. Now go and do the same."